Welcome to part 7 of the Zentangle OCEAN Project. Now, if you've been following along with the earlier parts in the series, you know that we are working on the individual elements or components that will make up our final drawing in some way, shape, or form, and that's part of the fun of seeing where we're going with it. But today we're moving into the final couple cartoon or toon elements, so we're going to start today with a treasure chest. Let's take a look. So a treasure chest is something that we're going to include in our drawing, but we need to know how to make it happen. So we're going to start by drawing a simple box shape. Once again, I'm going to turn my light out, so hopefully you can see that a little more clearly without glare. I'm just going to start by drawing some vertical lines that will indicate the edges of this box. And then we'll add some lines that connect those vertical lines. Now, if you're a doodler in any stretch of the word, you may have drawn hundreds of box shapes in your doodle career, and the way you want to draw that shape is that you're comfortable with, you go right ahead and do that. But what I want to do is try to keep a little bit of a perspective on this shape as we draw it so that it doesn't just look like it's facing us in one direction. So we're going to see that perspective. And now here I'm just building out the basic outline of the chest. There's the top, but we know that this is probably going to have a rounded top if it's a traditional treasure chest. I'm right up against the edge of my paper there, so part of that just vanishes off. Just something like that. And now we want to add a little bit of dimension to it, so we want the pieces of wood or metal or whatever you're envisioning to have some shape or thickness to them. I'm going to add little shapes here on the corner, like little metal ornamentation that might make this more like a fancy treasure chest. So we'll see these on all the corners. Just again, just sketching this in lightly. I'll zoom in here for you too, so that we have some sense of where these details will go in that final drawing. Now maybe we've got some different components of the wood that are making this up. And of course, we're hopefully going to fill our inside there. Maybe there's going to be some hatching marks there for shadow. We might have lumber there that's going into the pieces as well. So we'll flesh that out. And now it's probably going to be full of treasure, right? So we're going to create some little oval shapes that are nestled in. Again, just like with other details we've covered in the past, we don't have to make every little detail perfect because the impression of detail is the detail. And I'm going to add like a pearl necklace hanging over the side here. Again, we're just getting our placement ideas. Maybe there's a bunch of other things up in there, but we're going to just give it the coins, and maybe there's another pearl necklace of some sort hanging up here, coming out over the side. And now, since it's going to be sitting on the ocean floor and this thing is cracked open, we need to add a pile of coins here on the base. And let's assume maybe there was a big golden goblet of some kind here, or a pitcher. So I'm going to nestle that down into the sand and add those coins around in this area, just to give myself an idea of where things are going to set. Maybe a couple coins bounced way out there. And not to overly convolute this particular portion, but this might be right where we would put one of our coral reefs tucked in behind there. Now we can leave it out for the moment just so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves and confused. And now we've got to add our locking mechanism to this box here. Maybe that's where the big padlock went through, and we've got a big piece of metal maybe that sits about here that it was all connected into. So something kind of like that. Now that looks like it's really, really complex, but it's not. It's just a few straight lines and a few squiggly lines. But now we're going to take our pen and we're going to add the inking to it. We're going to flesh this out so that those details are more visible and more pronounced. Just we did our sketch so that we knew what was going in behind and in front of what else, so that we wouldn't draw our lines too far and end up being unable to make it look right. So here we're just coming through, adding these outer edge shapes. Maybe there's a metal little piece up there that we didn't draw because we can't really see it that well from this vantage point. Kind of like that. Again, these details are going to be small enough, even in our final drawing, not much larger actually than what we're drawing it here. So trying to get every little detail is not essential, but the idea, the impression of details is really important. Now here's where we're going to have our pearls coming over the side. So I want to draw them first so I can draw my boards behind it and not have lines appearing to go through the pearls, so to speak. And the same here. And they'll just disappear into the darkness of that inner part of the box, but we want some kind of visual indication of where they sit here. Now here's our big locking device out front here. And of course we have our wood boards that make up this chest coming across here. Up in here. I'm going to add some hatch marks that will help accentuate the shadow a bit on that when we shade it in. Alright, now let's draw some of these treasure items. This little vase or whatever this might be. And then the coins sitting around it, piled up. Don't you wish you could find a treasure chest like this, full of gold and pearls? I think I'd be all right with that. And you can ink in a little bit here and there darker, like where the shadows are between these little piles of coins. This will help give it a more realistic or dimensional effect as we're adding all of our coin details. Oops, I just see here I forgot a part of that board coming through up between the pearls. And of course there could be sea gunk or some kind of a weeds or moss or silt that has built up, so these coins aren't necessarily going to just be sitting there all shiny and perfect anyway. So by us adding these little pile looking thing, it just makes it a little more believable as we look at our scene here. Even though this is only a little fraction of that scene, you can already see with the other elements that we've learned, there's going to be a lot going on in this picture. So we want to make it fun, interesting to look at, and maybe capture little bits of our imagination as we go too. So lots of little details there that we're filling in. I'm going to add a little more dark, or a few more dark areas, just to indicate where these piled up and we can't kind of see down in there. A little additional detail here. All right, and that really is about it. That's all that we would need to do to create this proper effect in our drawing. Of course, we're going to shade it here in a moment. So let's see, let's add a little piece of coral coming up in here. We might as well get that practice for our final drawing. So let's see that we have a piece maybe that grows out this way. Fades off down behind the box there. Now we could even add one little one here, let's say. We don't want to obscure our chest too much, but we could certainly add one here, and then because we just are going to ink that in, it immediately becomes part of the foreground here. We'll add some little doodads indicating the ocean floor there. That's a very technical drawing term, by the way, doodad. Of course, I'm being silly. And then we can ink this in as well. All right. So there's our basic drawing. Now let's add some shadows to this. So we'll take our pencil, and of course inside here, and again it depends where the light is coming from, but inside the lid we're going to have more of a shadow there, of course. We're not going to be able to see down into that real well, so I'm adding some graphite there. Maybe just a little natural shadows here. Whoops, I need to add my board lines here with ink. There we go. We'll continue to add some shadow there. Maybe just a little bit of shading in throughout our gold coin areas, just to give that some shadow. And of course down along the base and in the coin areas down here, there are going to be shadows playing on that from the water waving here and there, and just other things casting that shadow, and distance will make it appear darker for us. And then once we get some of the graphite laid in where we think it will be the darkest, let's blend it a little bit, just to smooth it out and make those shadow effects a little more convincing. And then lastly, if we wanted to try to have a tiny bit more realism, we could add just a touch of graphite so that we can create the effect of water and it's shimmering. As we get deeper in the water, it gets darker. As we go toward the surface, it gets lighter. And so sometimes those simple realities will cause little shimmering . So we've got our basic image done for today's session of the Zentangle Ocean Project, and I think we have at least one more to go before we start working on our final project. So I will just say today, thank you so much for joining with me. Stick with it, we're almost done, and I hope you're enjoying the process as we go. Thanks again, take care now, bye-bye.